we're Americans. We don't do things just for money, for profit. Lewis and Clark, where is our sense of adventure and exploring and understanding our world?
This is Audiommunity, a podcast about our body's never-ending fight with the outside world.
Hi everybody, welcome to Audiommunity. My name is Matt. Today we are joined with a new and special updated version of What's Good in Science in 2025. Everything. Here with me today are my normal co-host, Dr. Kevin Bonham.
Hello.
And today we have Abbie Smith, Dr. Abbie Smith, who joins us actually from Emory. Now, Abbie, we talked with you quite some time ago, so it is really good to have you back on Audiommunity.
Did you look that up, by the way? I meant to do that before we started recording, and I'll go look for it. I think I know.
It was a while ago.
It was a long time ago.
It's like 2017 or something like that.
Yeah.
Quite a while. So you've been up to a lot since then.
Yes.
Actually, we both have here at Emory.
Yes.
And I will disclose that we are now hopefully going to be active collaborators on some cool projects.
Oh, that's exciting.
Finally.
Cool.
We got some cool science. But those of you that have been sort of following Audiommunity, I can't even say our own name, might know that we've had sort of a bifurcation of what we've done on this podcast. And it really came out of my own rantings about what is and is not good about science in 2025. We pretty quickly realized we did not want a full-on show about the anger of various scientists across the board. And so what we decided to do was we decided to sort of pull maybe some of the politics and the impact of current policy away from the science. And it has actually been a little while since Audiommunity circled back and started talking about some of those policy rollouts.
Although
unfortunately,
you can feel it bleed in to a lot of our episodes, and by bleed in, I don't mean like a trickle. I mean like,
it's usually injected right in there in the front.
Yeah. It's the shining like elevator door opens and the blood comes out into it. Yeah.
Right.
But I just looked it up just for reference. Episode 9, title I'd just like to second everything Abbie said, published in 2014.
Oh, wow.
So more than a decade ago.
Oh, that's adorable. I'm going to have to go back and listen to that again.
Seriously, when was that? What month was that? That must have been...
September 4th, 2014.
I had not yet graduated.
Yep.
So that's wild. Okay, cool. So...
When times were good.
Right.
Yeah.
They did.
Man.
They looked a lot different. So we have talked about the progression of policy on this show. We've talked a little bit about, the changes in indirect policy when that was starting to be discussed in January and February. We've talked about a whole bunch of things, including grants that have been pulled, all of these sorts of things. Recently, probably most recently, last night, there was
we should say it's February, or it's May 23rd as we're recording.
Yeah, May 23rd.
So you wouldn't know that from looking at the the NIH grants and funding page when the last RFA was issued.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You would think it was January.
Yeah, weird. It's very strange. So we're in a position now where the House of Representatives, U.S. House of Representatives, just passed a bill that is now headed to the Senate. Has a lot of things associated with it that people probably be interested to read up on, changes to Medicare and Medicaid, right? A lot of really high impact budget items, tax cuts, of course, all of these things. interestingly, so many high-impact things that one of the things that is not being discussed all that much in the national media, but is obviously finding its way around scientific circles if people were not already aware, is that built into that budget is a 40% reduction in National Institute of Health funding, right? So just as a bit of a primer to the folks that don't know about how our job is done, most biomedical research in the US is funded by the National Institute of Health. That funding sort of trickles, it's appropriated by Congress, it goes through the NIH. The NIH then doles that money out both to its intramural, so that's internal scientific funding program, and then the rest of it goes out to external recipients like Abbie, Kevin, and myself to do the work that we propose to do, that other scientists then say, hey, that's a great idea.
Yeah. Competitively. It's competitively doled out, not
It
as
is
a
not-
lottery or
Correct.
essay contest.
It is kind of an essay contest, but a really regulated one.
I
And we
saw
have to have
on-
like data and stuff.
Yeah, I saw on social media a point that I thought was really great, which we call these things grants, but which makes it sound like this is,
Charity-ish.
like free money, charity given out to scientists to do their pet projects. And the way that this person described it, forget who it is, and so I'm sorry for quoting you without giving you credit, but it was basically like, actually, this is a competitive bidding process where the government contracts with scientists to drive innovation, right? Like, and extremely competitive.
Yes.
Like pay lines are like under 10%. So you're
Yes.
talking about people at universities from around the country all competing with each other. The best places in the world to do this kind of research are competing against one another, and only the best of the best is actually getting funded.
Yeah.
And this is driving innovation. Kate has talked previously about how much of the work, so Kate's our other co-host, who's now in industry, and she talks about how much of the work that they do in their company is basically just getting ideas from academic research that they're going to commercialize. It's something like, if you look at the economics of it, something like every dollar that NIH spends generates like $2 to $3 of economic activity. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's not just free money being handed out to academics to like play in their labs. It's important stuff. So,
And I would say that if you do, you listeners, if you do have free money that you would like to hand out to academic endeavors, please do let us know. Or if you just know of where that free money exists, because at this moment it would be extraordinarily helpful. And to that end, we have in the past talked a little bit in our on our show about the potential impact of some of these policies. I talked about personally how grants, especially in the COVID era, funding that we obtained because we were doing really good work in the investigation of immune responses to viral infection, how some of that work has been cut. But I have to say, our core programs, my lab's core programs, fortunately right now, are still intact. That is not the case for many of my colleagues. Unfortunately, you are doing some excellent work over at the Hope Clinic. And so I'm really looking forward to the opportunity, one, to learn a little bit more about the work that you're doing, but also talk a little bit about how policy is currently impacting your work and what a 40% cut to the NIH budget does to your outlook on science. And I'm sorry to just drop that right on top of you. I can see your face.
First of all, just we get industry funding as well. And so this is an important thing to highlight just for average folks who might think, hey, why don't you just go to Pfizer and get money, go to Gilead and get money, have industry fund this if industry wants to profit off of it. Super. So part of we almost have the symbiotic, it really is a symbiotic relationship in that, academic research, we have this foundation, this worldwide foundation of institutions that have the administrators who know, listen, so we run clinical trials at the Hope Clinic. there's so much paperwork involved in human subjects research, and especially this experimental research-based human subjects research. Again, all the funding and the contracts, all the nurses, all of the physicians, all of the scientists performing the work. So I laugh as far, like, because I came from basic science and I still do basic science research, but now I'm doing human translational and clinical research. It is so highly regulated how we even purify white blood cells out of a tube. Like, everything has to be, we have a protocol, you follow the protocol, you don't go rogue, you don't think, oh, this is good enough. No, you have to do everything exactly the same as every other clinical site for that medication or for that vaccine all around the world. Because if there are some differences in outcomes, we don't want it to be, oh, this technician at the Hope Clinic decided to use this reagent instead of that reagent, and squirrel the results. So we have contracts with Pfizer, with Gilead, to test some of these medications, because we have the infrastructure to do the recruitment, to do the study visits, to process the samples. And we, like, if that disappears because we don't have Interact anymore, and we can't, like, our building is rented. Like, if we can't pay the rent, if we can't pay the gas, if we can't pay the internet bill, and Emory has to shut down the Hope Clinic, then Pfizer can't, they don't have an alternative.
Can you give us some perspective on what kinds of trials those, or what sort of work does that look like right now for you?
So at the Hope Clinic, we have a couple different branches of research. One does vaccine trials for, let's say, new innovative ways of delivering vaccines. So especially like with kids, little kids, and they're getting their shots and they don't understand, and it's scary. What about if we had a patch that a parent could apply at home on a child's thigh or something like that, instead of needing to go into a clinic and get a shot? Like new innovative ways of delivering the vaccines, vaccines for, let's say Shigella or other diseases. So that's kind of one pipeline. And then the pipeline that I help oversee, and again, just the laboratory processing side, there's massive teams involved. I don't want to act like I'm in charge of anything. I'm helping facilitate these studies. So those are with new HIV vaccines, new HIV prevention, new HIV treatment protocols. So, for example, let's say the example I always give is with birth control. What's really great about birth control is we have lots of different options for people. So they can try things. Oh, I don't like it, I can try something else. They can use different forms of birth control that really fits their lifestyle at a certain time, one that has the side effects that are tolerable to them, and it's going to be different for every person. But if you give somebody lots of choices, then they have lots of options to find something that works for them. It's kind of the same with HIV prevention. So pre-exposure prophylaxis, so some kind of medication we can give someone who might be at risk of being exposed to HIV. There are so many different ways we can do that now. It used to be a daily pill, but that doesn't work for everyone. Everyone doesn't want anti-HIV medication in their medicine cabinet for, a nosy aunt or uncle to come throw and rifle around and start being obnoxious. And some people aren't in a position, to really have these conversations with their partner. Why are you taking anti-HIV medication? Are you cheating on me? So giving people lots of different options, like, for example, a long-acting injectable. Those are the kind of trials we're doing right now. So the purpose trials, which I'm just like, as a scientist, and it was, I worked in the HIV vaccine world for a really long time. And it turns out now we've got these medications that you can get an injection once every 3 months. Once every 6 months.
Seriously?
We're having a trial coming up once a year. Once a year injection to prevent HIV
of
transmission.
Antiretrovirals?
Yes. The pharmaceutical people they're crazy in like a mad scientist wonderful way. And so, like, we're part of those trials. We're going to get to run those trials here, and so those are called the purpose trials. And when I say about the options thing, in the U.S., when daily antivirals to prevent HIV transmission were in the works that work fantastic in the U.S. In gay men. So like, oh great, they went to sub-Saharan Africa and tried this in the women there, and it just wasn't as effective. And it wasn't. They couldn't really figure out why. Well, it turns out that that was not the modality that works best for that group of people. And it turns out
the people most at risk in sub-Saharan Africa
exactly
are women.
So these long-acting injectables, they had 0 transmission events in their trial in sub-Saharan, and not 0 out of 20 people. It was 0 out of thousands and thousands of people transmission events.
So it's a functional population cure, right? Yeah. It's a functional population cure.
And that folks don't feel intimidated by, or listen, I take a pill every single day to prevent my migraines. I have to take it at the same time every single day, and even then I forget. It's really just not. It's not always the most useful and practical thing. So to have a long-acting injectable like this is just absolutely scientifically amazing. But then, if we want to talk about social things, then we get to the end of a trial. And so we're scientists, right? So in our brains right now, we're like, done. But this is great. Just just get it out there. We're done.
Send it.
Yay.
Send it to me.
Let's go. Well, it turns out that's the battle is just starting, because then, all these people have been part of this trial and have contributed to the success of this medication. And partnering with all these physicians now, I'm seeing the other side of clinical trials, which is how do you make sure that all these folks still have access to medication afterwards? Because insurance might not cover it because it's still considered experimental, or it's so new. All the time with the new drugs, they're not covering those. If they don't have insurance, then they can go to different organizations, at least around the Atlanta metro area, that can provide them with medication at free or low cost. But lots of those places depend on federal grants to provide those kinds of services. So but that's kind of what we do as far as we at the Hope Clinic, and especially my arm of it. We are performing clinical trials where we're trying out all these really cutting edge, innovative ways to prevent HIV transmission.
Yeah, which based on my understanding of the CDC divisions that were cut, unfortunately, has been on the wrong side of what the current Health and Human Services Administration has decided is relevant to public health. As a reminder, and I think we talked about it, Kevin, on this show, the number of divisions that were hit at the CDC were vast, but amongst the most prominent was the division of HIV prevention. So essentially that entire division was cut.
Well,
we also ran we ran trials for them as well.
Yeah. And not to mention the fact that PEPFAR and USAID, to get these medications, these sounds like magical compounds that you can inject and keep people HIV free for a year. To get those into the people that need it in other places besides the United States, that's USAID, that's PEPFAR paying for that.
Yes.
And those are gone now.
Yeah, so maybe talk, just a little bit up until this point. Obviously, we've got this big looming budget thing coming down, but up until this point, what sort of impact have you all seen on your programs?
So lots of delays. Personally, yet we always have to say yet, haven't experienced any grant terminations, but also lots of delay. Of that I've never seen or encountered in the decade plus that we've been part of this community. And so, it's not canceling. They're just not sending out the checks to perform the work. And to be clear, these are grants that we were talking about the pay line at 8. These were top scoring grants. So
in other words, you sent in a proposal for what you were going to do, and a group of probably 5 to 10. What's the size of a study section?
It's been more than that.
Okay,
for the big catapults, at least 20, 25,
okay,
maybe,
so you got
even
25
more.
scientists. They're not all going to read your grant in detail, but at least several of them are going to read your grant in high detail. They're going to score it for innovation, for technical competence. Like, is this science? Does it sound like something this person can do? Is it innovative? Is it worth funding? And you have a group of experts in the community looking at your grant against probably, I don't know, what would you say, 30, 40, 50 other grants, more than that?
The last study
Hundreds?
sections I've been on have 60.
Yeah.
I mean, people are putting in grants, 60
Yeah.
proposals
So
per yeah.
So you have a group of experts saying that this work, out of all the work that's being proposed in this area across the country, this is one of the most important, innovative, worthwhile science to do. I think, yeah, it's...
So we were supposed to have, so they say that, telling people more about the process after the grants are reviewed, they're given a score, but then, even then, let's say you're the number one grant, you had the best score out of that whole pool. It still doesn't automatically gets funded. Several months later, it goes to a scientific advisory council meeting where they officially rubber stamp your proposal, and then they ask the university and the investigator for more information, and they make sure everything is set up and ready to go the second they send you. It's called a notice of award, and that's the first year of money to do the work. So unfortunately, we were supposed to have, for one of the proposals, was supposed to have scientific advisory council meeting on January 29th, and that was during the federal shutdown of everything. Then it was delayed until April for the advisory council meeting, and we are optimistic. You know, we have subsequently sent in all of the requested documents, but it's one of those things where, like, if we are all in highly competitive fields. I mean, you all went to Harvard, right? Like, we're used to the idea that maybe we won't make it in this field because we're not good enough, and everybody else just is smarter, has more innovation, are able to master the new techniques faster, or just dumb luck. We're going to get cut. But to have a proposal scored so well and still be concerned about your job, like, that's something I don't accept. I don't accept.
Yeah.
And what's made it so difficult to be in this situation.
Well, and I think it sort of speaks to this, like, this money that isn't getting spent is not only affecting the work that you are doing. Like, before we started recording, Matt and I were talking about this grant that we're, like, working on, and how hard it is to even put in the effort to write this grant.
Yeah.
Now, in this current environment, because we're like, we have no idea if the institutes are going to have money to fund it. So, like, and you got to imagine, like, a bunch of graduate programs this year had to dramatically reduce or even cut entirely their graduate school class. So we're talking not only about good, important science that could be done right now. We're also talking about the entire pipeline of training, of keeping people in this field. Because, like, scientists that are working at universities, we don't make the big bucks, right? Like, our jobs are very cool because we get to explore the frontiers of knowledge, and that's something that we value. But we're not getting paid, like, I'm pretty certain that Kate makes probably twice my salary. I mean, I've never talked to her about it, but I would not be surprised, let's put it that way, if she's making twice what I'm making in the industry. But yeah, so these are people, we're talking about grinding people down that want to
and to be clear lives. Too, it's not, listen, this is the other thing I've said too. we ran the Moderna clinical trials. We were part of that. Atlanta was empty. And like I said, my technicians, and so I have 2 different batches of technicians, those on the clinical processing and those in my basic research. And so myself and my basic research team couldn't help them with the clinical processing because we weren't certified for those. So we were driving around Atlanta with samples, with bags of blood, from the Northside Hospital to the Midtown Hospital, back to the Hope Clinic to main campus. We were all participating in those scary moments after COVID. And so, and especially, with Tony Fauci, the head of the NIH, and everything he has done for HIV research over the decades. I'm writing a paper right now that, I'm writing the paper, putting in the references, and I'm like, oh God, this paper is fantastic. And I look and, oh, it's Tony's on it. So I would understand if, the HIV and vaccine research community needed to be punished for what we did during COVID. I would understand. Listen, shame on us.
Yeah.
But the fact that it is not only us, it is the Alzheimer's. I was on in February. I was on a study section. It was a very strange series of events that I am on the study section, and I'm still on it, and it's funny. But it's aging study section. And I'm reviewing K99s, which are proposals that are written by early career investigators who are transitioning from being trainees to being the next generation of scientists, and is helping them make that jump from student to master. And we had, I want to say, maybe half a dozen proposals pulled the day of study section because they contain naughty words. And all of these proposals are on Alzheimer's, are on aging. That affects all of us, to be clear.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
We're going to get old?
Yeah, well...
I don't plan on that.
Yeah. It's pretty darn optimistic of us to make that assumption at this point. But in theory, that affects all of us. Alzheimer's runs in my family.
Me too.
Okay, why are we pulling funds from the Alzheimer's? Why are we also pulling funds from breast cancer? I've said this on another podcast with a financial friend. I have a dear family friend who's young. She is a young woman losing her battle and dependent on anything. She would literally do anything to spend more time with her kids. And why are they being punished? And when, I understand a lot of the general public doesn't understand this process. You talk to a grad student and they don't fully understand the process of how NIH funding works. And really, I don't even think...
I barely understand it.
Exactly. You have to learn.
We
learn by stumbling through it ourselves.
It's a business, right? And it is a complicated business. And until you have to learn the ins and the outs of the business, there's no reason for you to know it, right?
Exactly.
We train our graduate students in science. Right? Most of the people that interact with science on a day-to-day basis interact with the science and the questions, right? It's not until you actually have to run the business, right?
Yeah.
Run a lab, that you really have to. And I think up until this point, if I was to put marks against us, I think one of the things that we fail to do as scientists often is explain not so much, about the science we do, although I think we could do a better job of that. I think that there's a lot to be gained from the general public understanding a little bit more about how their tax dollars go from their pocket to driving innovation, because I think that is a critical gap that unfortunately we contended with during COVID. We're contending with now in probably the worst possible way. And I mean, everything that you're talking about, we're touching on grants being pulled and all of that, and that is absolutely true, right? And it's hitting us across a number of sectors that I don't think that if people really understood what's being hit, they would be okay with.
Yeah, when they aren't. When I explained to my hometown friends and family what was happening, of course, then even if they were on a different side of the political spectrum, they were still contacting their senators and so forth and they did initially when that initial freeze was in place. But it seems like we've gotten numb, and they've gotten more creative. Well, it's not even creative. Just don't send out the check. Oh yeah, it's coming. It's in the mail. That's not creative.
Exactly. And so all that's sort of targeted, but now I think, and just to drive us deeper into this sort of valley that we're approaching here, all of that is targeted at some level. It's not well targeted, which is why those 6 grants got pulled from your study section, right? They're literally just control effing through grants and finding, because that was the dumb way to do it.
Yes.
This next wave, a 40% cut to the NIH, is not a go through and find the grants that disagree with you kind of hit. It is a raise the thing to the ground kind of hit. And, one of the reasons that I wanted to have you come on and talk about this a little bit is because I think one of the interesting things that I've seen, and I wanted to get your perspective on it, one of the interesting things that I've seen is that, like any large institution, right, the Biomedical Academy has people that have been in it for a long time, right? There are people that are well established with protections, with all of those things. And there has been an extraordinarily, I think, conservative approach to how to address this problem, right? Because I think that people are drawing on decades worth of experience in research ups and downs and, the ebbs and flows of research. And, in the 90s, there was an entire generation of scientists that were kind of hollowed out because funding went away for a little while.
Well, even 2012, 2013-ish, when during Obama's second presidency, and he didn't have Congress, something similar happened.
And so I think that there is this, I think that there has been a wait-and-see approach, a don't speak up, don't speak out, keep your head down, you just roll through it. And
because they're the ones who survived, and that's what worked last time.
Exactly.
It's survivor bias.
When I push back on that, and politely, and everybody is always,
They aren't one of the ones who got cold.
Yeah, I think that the answer that I get is frequently, do you know how bad this could get? Right? Like that's the response that I think I most often get. And I think that at this point it's like I think that there is a misunderstanding of how bad it is already becoming and what the trajectory of that is. And I think that the question in my mind is not so much how bad is it going to get, it's going to be how bad does it have to get before the scientific community wakes up and realizes that as bad as it can get is we all don't have jobs anymore, right? The entire system doesn't exist the way that it exists now. And I think if we keep our heads down about this, we risk just running right off that cliff in hopes that the cliff won't appear.
Yeah. But it's right there. The cliff's right.
Yeah,
cliff's right there.
Some of us are falling off of it right now.
Yeah.
I think that I think one of the disconnects is that so much of what we do is like when you're pushing at the frontiers of knowledge, which is ostensibly what we're all doing, the benefits aren't around the corner, right? You don't start a clinical trial expecting that the next quarter or the next year or maybe even the next 5 years that you're going to have something to show for it. We're talking about long-term outcomes. And particularly in this area, like if we stopped all American science right now, people's lives would still be pretty okay. Like we can cure a lot more cancers now than we used to be able to. We can prevent a lot more things than we used to be able to. And so like people don't miss
there are no immediate
the thing
consequences.
That doesn't come. Right? You don't miss the innovation that didn't happen.
Yep.
Because of what's happening right now. And I think that's part of what people are banking on. Like some people, I think, in the media and stuff are doing stories about like GLP-1, which are these miracle drugs, that lots of people are taking now, that like to get there, NSF had to fund some study on like Gila monster saliva or something because they found a molecule there that was led to the thing which led to the thing which led to the thing which led to GLP-1, right? And that to me, I think is the problem here is that if all science shut down right now, you wouldn't see the effect of what we didn't discover. Unless you're that person right now that has breast cancer and is in a clinical trial that got canceled, right? At my institution, somebody was in the last years of a 5-year clinical trial that was like on a cancer vaccine that got pulled, and now they can't collect outcomes data. So, you know, those people that get cancer in 5 years that could have been prevented, they're not going to know that it was because this grant got canceled. Right? And that's the tragic thing to me, is that it's so hard to communicate what is going to be lost because we don't know specifics of what's going to be lost. All we know is what has been driving innovation up to this point, and we're torching that.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that we do know, right, is it pointing back to the economics data that you mentioned before. We know that a cut in biomedical research leads to a drop-off in economic growth in the areas. Biomedical research is a positive economic driver in all of the places that those funds are distributed. We know that jobs as a part of that go away. We know that. We also know that the same buildings, right, on Emory's campus, for example. Emory is a really interesting place because Emory not only is a major academic center, but it also serves as the center of healthcare for the city of Atlanta, and I would argue the center of healthcare for the state of Georgia, and is probably even a little larger than that, right? Probably not even restricted to Georgia boundaries. So Emory's hospitals serve as a central hub for healthcare for the city of Atlanta and as an extension Georgia in general. And the same buildings that provide patient care are the buildings that house researchers like you and I, which means that the buildings that patients are getting their care across the state of Georgia are funded by the research dollars, the indirect costs that come in from your grants and come in from my grants and then get distributed by that university. So at the very, very least, we know that fewer dollars will get injected into the state of Georgia. The economics of that will be bad. Jobs in the state of Georgia will be lost. And Emory University, which provides healthcare for the state of Georgia, will not be able to afford the facility it currently uses to support its patient population.
Well, and not to mention the next generation of doctors that are being trained at Emory Hospital.
And nurses, right? and everyone. So yes, that actually brings up a major question I have as well, which is in many states the governors have really stepped up to place pressure on the federal government for this radical financial move they're currently making. And my question is, when is our governor going to step up for us?
Yeah, and I think that is a question that should be asked across the Southeast. I think one of the really one of the most cynical components of this, one of the things that I can't accept is preferential treatment as a university within the Southeast, where the attempt is to minimize economic damage. And I think that there are policies that are being rolled out that are intended to primarily target blue states, while at the highest level possible, exempting folks in red states from the teeth of most of that. I agree with
but
you.
But they are. I mean, it's like this is like this severe, and again, as I said, radical cut in funding and in this institution, which was that everybody says this. You talk to John Ossoff or whatever. All of these systems certainly could be streamlined and improved. No one's ever saying that, but it was for all intents and purposes, a self-sufficient, money-making, innovation-driving machine. And to interfere with this not only influences Harvard and Yale, and no, this influences every single state. You guys went to Harvard. I went to school in Oklahoma, and we had an excellent research institute there. They just built a new cancer center just as I was graduating. Children's health, eye health, they're the hub of research in patient care in Oklahoma. Everyone's getting hit, and that's the thing. And we're talking about the graduate students and everyone getting cut. I got my first graduate student this year, and I was like,
she's great, by the way.
She's so much fun, but I feel like 100-year-old who just adopted a puppy. That's optimistic that I'm gonna be around to get this young woman across the finish line of a PhD. But the issue is, she's fantastic and it was a great fit, and I had nowhere safe to send her. It wasn't like, I would love to have you, I can't keep you, but you need for your career to go again to a cancer research lab, to a neurology lab. There was no place to send her. So, if these kids, and every single graduate student in every single state is facing this. There's no safe place for anyone, red or blue.
No. Yeah, and
no matter what your pet cause is.
Yeah, I think I poorly stated where I was going with that, which was I think that the answer to your question is, unfortunately, that people are trying to play politics with this.
And I do agree.
I think that is deeply problematic. I think the idea of playing politics with this kind of thing in general is really morally abhorrent.
Yes.
Because it is not just talking about the grants that you are talking about. It's not talking about the jobs and all of those things. When you're getting down to deeply affecting patient care, this is not a lever that we should be pulling at a national level. And if people think that we are not pulling on that lever right now through this, they're simply misinformed, right? It is absolutely something that is being wielded right now as if it's not going to kill people, and unfortunately it is.
I mean, it already has, right? But I also want to come back to something Abbie said earlier, which is, I think that one could read sometimes the things that we say about the way that this is getting torn down as if we are saying that academia is perfect, that the way that we fund science is perfect. You can't make changes to this system. It's delivered innovation in the past, but lots of things are changing, technology's changing, there's good ideas, and I think I am the first person to say a lot of institutions of science are somewhat sclerotic. We've got these old people that have succeeded in the current system and don't want to see change or innovation, right? I've been ranting about scientific publication for as long as I've known Abbie.
Since 2014, at least.
Before that, well before that. And so I don't want what we're saying to come across as there is no room for change. And also, frankly, if people have different politics than us and think that the research priorities that we want to pursue are not the ones that we should pursue, I think, it's fair enough. The United States spends more on research than anywhere else in the world, by a lot. China is trying to catch up, but even now, the U.S. spends tons of money on research. We all see the benefit of that. We all think it's important. If Congress wants to change the general direction of the research project, Abbie's showing off her lovely dog now to undermine my point. Very cute. I think that's a discussion that we should have. The problem that I have,
why can't?
the problem that I have, is that, and I think that, like, I think that, like, we should have, like, a discussion about, like, the research priorities that we want to pursue. I think, like, if people have different politics than us and think that the research priorities that we want to pursue are not the ones that we should pursue, I think
Go ahead.
I just want to say, the problem that I have is that there's a veneer to what is happening now where they're trying to say, like, we want to improve the process. And what I want to just say is that this is not an attempt to improve the process. This is an attempt to burn it down.
Yes.
This is an attempt to destroy sources of knowledge that are not ideologically aligned with the current administration. And it's an attempt to bring academia as a civil society organization to heel. And if people want to talk about reforms, I've got lots of ideas. I think there are a lot of things that we should try. But what's happening now is destruction.
This is destruction. This is functionally terrorism. I haven't slept. I don't. Like, I will open up my fitness app and show you compromise, poor, not good, sleeping for the last 4 months. But no, and like this energy could be put in a positive direction, is what I think what we're saying, a constructive direction. If you genuinely, there is absolutely no reason why this administration couldn't come in and do something like, I don't know, Operation Warp Speed, where you tell scientists, hey, this is a critical need for the U.S. people, and it is your top priority to deliver right now. And then the scientists do that. We could call Operation Warp Speed to make a COVID vaccine. We could make Operation Warp Speed for Alzheimer's. We could make the president could stand up there and say, into this 4 years, I want heart disease, one of the number one killers of American people, to be reduced 90%. And that's where all of our effort is going.
All of the smartest people in the country
would pivot.
Not to mention all of the smartest people from lots of other countries
would pivot.
Would come to
and
do
answer that
work.
call. Yes.
Yep.
As opposed to just taking a machete to everything. Like what is your end goal? Is it like what's the point here? But I think ultimately the goal is not making America healthy again. It's not. So that's not where the energy and the money is being put. So
yeah,
I say this too. Like I studied serial killers in undergrad. I went to Truman State, studied under Sal Costa and his little serial killer program. Before it was cool, before everybody had a serial killer podcast and Netflix documentaries, whatever, I was into that. And kind of the thing is, like, it's hard to rationalize the behavior of people who do not behave rationally. You know, we had, as far as, grant destruction, a number of grants are being terminated or withheld because they have international components. This is a foundational, science is a worldwide endeavor and a worldwide project. And so sometimes you might have a collaborator in Switzerland who helps you with structure of antibodies, something, or you have, in our case, clinical trial sites at other locations around the world. Everybody has international collaborators. It's a world language. And now all of these grants are being terminated or withheld because you have and it's not logical. It's not, hey, we are concerned that U.S. dollars aren't being spent appropriately, and we could go, hey, okay, here's how we oversee this. Here are all of our records from the last 19 years. You can audit, you can do whatever. And the U.S. government subsequently says, oh, okay, this is fine. We'll fund it. They're just, again, it's just a machete. It's hitting some labs that have international collaborators. It's not hitting others. All of this, we're rational people, and it is hard to understand the supposed logic and the supposed strategy of people who do not have a logic or strategy. They don't. It's destruction.
It's just destruction.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunately a lot easier to knock towers over than it is
them.
to build towers, which is why my 8-year-old is consistently frustrated with my 3-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah.
3-year-olds, when they go around knocking over towers, make a mess of things.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, but three-year-olds can be, I don't want to say reasoned with, but
Sometimes.
but you can provide incentives, or you can show a 3-year-old the mistakes that they're making. They won't always remember or understand, but like you can guide them. And I feel like the thing that we're dealing with right now is we're dealing with a group of people who have an ideological project that has decided that universities are the enemy.
Today, not
Yeah.
not in 2016, not in 2017, not in
Right.
2018, not in today.
Right.
Again, the rational.
Right.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. But yeah, it's that the universities are the enemy, and so this is not like all of the explanations. It's just so clear it's pretext. Like I'm thinking, like obviously, like you've mentioned a couple times, Matt and I went to Harvard. We are getting emails from the president of Harvard about the current stuff that's going on. We know a lot of people there, and they're saying it's because of anti-Semitism. Like they're telling the Jewish president of Harvard that they're taking away, like they're trying to punish his institution
Right.
because of anti-Semitism. And it's so clear, like if it wasn't anti-Semitism, then they would find
anything.
the DEI, or they would find
Yeah.
whatever they need to go after their ideological enemies.
It's always the insincerity. There's no sincerity in any of this, and it's I mean, we've seen that for ages. This group of individuals, they're pro-life. You're not pro-life. If you were pro-life, you'd be investing in healthcare and maternal health outcomes and making sure kids in school got enough food to eat and had a safe place to sleep at night. If you're listen, there are people who are pro-life who are that kind of pro-life. These people are not that kind of pro-life. It's window dressing. You say you care about women and women's sports. I was a 3-sport letterman and not a good one, but I assure you that nobody gives a rat's ass about women's sports, and especially high school. Like,
there was on that note, there was a great article I read where this girl who was like, I think on the softball team in one of these states where the governor was like making a big deal out of this one trans woman on the team, and she was like, if you care so much about women's softball, like why don't you get us a field that doesn't flood every
Well, and we know why there are inequities in sports, and it's money.
Yeah.
So like we're not actually addressing those things. It's just this lack of sincerity that I just, again, you can't argue with it because it's
insincere.
Yeah, and from my it makes my stomach hurt. It does. I was like, ugh, that's so gross to be like that. If there's one thing, again, if someone genuinely cares about making people healthy and making America healthy again, there are so many ways to do that. I don't know, making sure kids get vaccines. That's not.
Or like you said, fed in schools. There's so much low-hanging fruit that you could
universally bring us together
in a positive direction, right? It is not like we have to sit on the ideological edges of these arguments. There is so much that can be done in the center that when none of the most basic effort is put to those low-hanging fruit efforts, it becomes clear that that's really not the point of the effort at all. Right, like you could flood the zone on stuff that is considered non-controversial in a warp speed effort. You could warp speed, right? Kids getting lunch in school, and you could take those dollars
and imagine that being your legacy.
Right, exactly, and none of that happens because that's not the point. Right, that's not the point. So let's hope that somebody does that. Someday.
Yeah, I mean, part of me when I am not despairing, part of me feels like there is some opportunity here. Like things are getting burnt down, and a lot of that is non-recoverable. This is not a choice that I would have ever made. That said, I think if enough people think that innovation is important and are willing to put in the effort to fight back, I think we can come out of this better than we went into it. A lot of damage has been done in the meantime.
Yeah.
A lot of lives have been lost, frankly, in the meantime.
Yeah. And now we understand that there has to be safeguards in place to prevent something like this from happening again.
Yeah.
You can't predict. I don't think any of us predicted this.
I 100% anti-predict this. I told Matt, NIH is a big ship. They can't turn it that fast.
To be clear,
Like,
I thought there was going to be enough red tape and enough jargon and enough paperwork to prevent this kind of damage. So on two levels, one, I wonder how they know how to mess this up so bad. So who's the rat? Who's the rat? Who's the rat that is guiding some of this destruction? But two, very clearly, we need to have some additional barriers to keep the ship afloat in cases of something like this happening again. And to be clear as well, if this was, I laugh, if this was a genuine moment where we had, let's say an asteroid hit Chicago and there was a huge cloud of smoke and dust and debris over the U.S. and everybody had to shut down what they were doing and like the country had to reform because of some traumatic event. Of course, this is all manufactured. Even COVID wasn't like this. Like this is all a manufactured crisis. It's man-made, so we need to figure out ways to make sure it doesn't get made like that. Like this doesn't happen again. Yeah. And I'd say too, one more thing. We talk about so many more things. We talk about, and I want to make a shout out to NSF friends and things like that who work with butterflies and botany and things that perhaps don't immediately have financial implications. We're Americans. We don't do things just for money, for profit. Lewis and Clark, where's our sense of adventure and exploring and understanding our world? Going to the moon. It's not for money. That's just to say we went to the moon. The American sense of wonder and discovery and exploration, I think, is a spirit that lives in all of the scientists here. Whether you're doing a clinical trial and I can say, hey, I'm directly helping people, or whether you are studying different. Well, and that's honestly, if we get right down to it, pollinators and our crops and really, come on.
Well, and like I said, Gila monster saliva. You never know.
You
where
never know.
The next
you cannot predict
discovery is going to come from.
Revolutionary things like that.
Yep.
When a society and when our scientists, as Matt said, ourselves, when are scientists going to step up and say enough? And how do you get through to someone who is just? How do you get through to make changes and correct this path that has been put in front of us?
I think it's a really important question. Yeah. But to me, it's like there's almost two levels of that. One is there are people that you can never reach.
Yeah.
Just because your ideology is too far apart. They're just living in a completely different world than you are. Their reality is different than your reality. And those people, I think it's important I have people like this in my own family that are, off the deep end on the other side. And I think it's important to be willing to have the relationship that you can have with somebody that lives in a different reality and talk about the things that you can talk about and realize that it is not worth trying to come to them with logic. But I think there's a vast swath of other people who aren't thinking about this. They're going to their job. They're trying to feed their kids. They don't know a scientist. They don't see how it impacts their lives.
I mean, I sure didn't as
directly.
a kid.
And
I mean,
yeah. And I think, it is understandable that there's a bunch of people that don't take the time, which is why I think, it's important to share what we can and try to put
like
these
this.
arguments out
Yeah.
out into the ether and talk to the people that you can talk to. I think trying to convince someone wearing a red hat that science is important or that vaccines are important or whatever, that's a losing battle. But having a conversation with your book club or with your sports team, your intramural, your pickleball partners, if this is not something that they're thinking about,
yeah.
Those are the people that we need to target and say, this is why it matters to you.
Right. And I think before we do any of that, honestly, I think that one of the things that that makes it hard for us to advocate as scientists is we are so used to advocating on our own behalf through our own individualized styles of communication, right? We are trained to write down the most persuasive, individualized argument on a piece of paper and then send it to a review committee for the logic to then take over and everyone to recognize just how smart we are and what a wonderful idea we've had. And I think that we sometimes as a community forget that in order for an argument to be persuasive, we have to first organize around those arguments, and we have to be vocalizing it across a number of different medias roughly the same way every single time, right? At some level, there is a messaging campaign to be had here, and my hope is that by at least having this conversation openly so that other people can hear it and start to come to consensus on some of the things that can be messaged on, hopefully we can start to organize and form community around this kind of thing. Because I think if we do that, it becomes much easier to start to bring those conversations into places where people might not understand, like you were saying, exactly what a scientist does day in and day out. And then, all of a sudden they're hearing from plenty of them, right? And they didn't realize that those people existed within their community. So hopefully
there
we can
is.
Do that work.
Oh, I can send you a link. There's and this is something that I need to do as well. It's something about scientists come home or something like that. Yeah. Because like I said, I'm from a town of, we're going to call it 10,000 people. It's not really that big. I think that's probably when college is in session or something. They're calling it 10,000. It is a really small town. There were no scientists. I thought if you were smart, you became an engineer, which I didn't even really know what an engineer was. If you were good at math, you became an engineer or a physician. I didn't know that, and I know the people. My hometown is proud of the work I do, but do they really understand the importance of not just me but everybody? We can write home to our hometown papers and say, hey, here's an update. Here's what I'm up to, and here's why funding this research is important.
A website is sciencehomecoming.com. So it's an effort to get people to write op-eds essentially in their hometown newspapers.
Because I am this administration is trying to spin people who go to Harvard as they went to Harvard. Give me a break.
They send their kids to Harvard.
Exactly.
Or they try to.
That it's trying to make them all, fancy, smancy, hoity-toity. A lot of the kids who go to Harvard are there because of scholarships, and they worked really hard to get where they are. And I'm a PhD and assistant professor at Emory. I came from humble rural beginnings as well. As far as the money goes, I rent. I'm a grown adult. I rent, and I have a 2012 Malibu. A lot of stains on the seats. I'm not fancy hoity-toity, nothing. We're just average people who do this because one, it's fun, but two, it's our way of giving back to the community. And I mean,
we will continue to do that.
We are. I got no place else to go.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for agreeing to come on. I know that this is mildly depressing, but like
no,
I said,
it's really depressing. Like
it is.
Yeah,
it is. But I do appreciate your willingness to sort of come on and vocalize some of that and help people understand exactly what these kinds of things do to our community and ultimately to their community. I think that's sort of what it comes down to. So. As I have promised, we will continue as things emerge on Audiommunity to try to keep y'all informed as to how policy is developing and what the impacts of those policies are, both to our labs and regionally and also nationally and internationally. So if you want to find us, you can find us at audiommunity.org. That's AUDIOMMUNITY.org. If you appreciate the work that we're doing here, you can always support us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Audiommunity.
And you don't need millions of dollars to fund a clinical trial. You can just give us like $1 or $2 a month, and that's going to go a long way for us. So
that's true. Yeah, actually, to be setting all of the glibness aside for a second, podcasts like this, right, independent ways of getting information out like this are an extraordinarily cheap way of driving scientific messages out into the community. So if you do value it, please do support us however you can. And the music for the intro and the outro are written and created by Rachel Reinick. So thank you all for joining us, and Abbie, thank you again for coming on today.
Great to see you.
All right.
Sometimes